Imagine a world where the first humans chipped stones to survive, a world that somehow turned into the one we know today, full of skyscrapers, smartphones, and space travel. How did we get from there to here? In this epic journey, we're diving deep into the wild, incredible story of human civilization, from the first spark of fire to the digital age that's shaping our future. Let's uncover how we became who we are. Part 1. The Prehistoric Era. The Dawn of Humanity. Early humans and stone tools. Our story kicks off millions of years ago in the vast plains and forests of East Africa. Think Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, a land teeming with life under a scorching sun. Around 7 million years ago, our earliest ancestors, the hominins, emerged. One of the first we know about is Sahelanthropus chadensis, a creature with a brain the size of a chimp's, but a face hinting at something more human. Fossils from Chad, dated to 6 to 7 million years ago, show it might have walked upright. Its spine suggests it could stand tall, freeing its hands for new tasks. Then, around 4.2 million years ago, Australopithecus anamensis appeared, followed by the famous Australopithecus afarensis, Lucy's kind, around 3.9 to 2.9 million years ago. Lucy's skeleton, found in Ethiopia in 1974, is a treasure. 3.2 million years old, she stood about 3.5 feet tall, with long arms for climbing but legs built for walking. Her kind roamed in small groups, maybe 10 to 20 individuals, scavenging for fruits, nuts, and the occasional small animal. Fast forward to 2.6 million years ago, and Homo habilis, nicknamed Handyman, stepped onto the scene. These early humans had bigger brains, around 600 cubic centimeters. Ours are about 1350 cubic centimeters, and they started something revolutionary, making tools. In places like Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, archaeologists found what we call Oldowan tools, simple stones chipped into sharp edges. Picture a fist-sized rock banged against another until it flakes into a blade. With these, they could slice through tough animal hides, butcher meat from a gazelle kill, or dig up starchy tubers buried in the dirt. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. These tools didn't just help them eat, they changed how they lived. Hunting became more efficient, and food sharing likely strengthened group bonds. Imagine a band of Homo habilis huddled together, passing chunks of meat around, their stone tools glinting in the firelight. This was the spark of human ingenuity, the first step toward mastering the world around them. Fire and the power of cooking. Now, let's jump to about 1.8 million years ago, when Homo erectus arrived. Taller, with longer legs and a brain up to 1,000 cubic centimeters, they were built for endurance, perfect for chasing prey across the savanna. But their real game changer was fire. The earliest solid evidence comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dated to around 1 million years ago. Charred bones and ash piles show they controlled it. Some argue they tamed fire even earlier, maybe 1.5 million years ago, based on subtle clues like cooked plant remains at sites like Kubifora in Kenya. Fire was a superpower. Picture a chilly night. A group of Homo erectus gathers around a crackling blaze, the orange glow lighting their faces. It kept predators like saber-toothed cats at bay. Those growls in the dark stayed distant. It warmed them through freezing nights, especially as they spread beyond Africa into cooler places like Europe and Asia. But the biggest win? Cooking. Roasting meat over flames or baking roots in coals made food softer and easier to chew. Raw meat takes hours to digest. Cooked meat gives energy fast. Anthropologists say this fueled brain growth. More calories, less chewing, bigger thinking power. At sites like Kesem Cave in Israel, 400,000 years ago, hearths show they roasted deer and aurochs, wild cattle. Imagine the smell of sizzling fat, the sound of laughter as they shared a meal. Fire wasn't just practical, it was social, maybe the birthplace of storytelling, where grunts turned into words around the warmth. The beginnings of language. Language is trickier. No fossils of words exist, but it's tied to brain size and social life. Homo erectus likely started it, maybe 1.5 million years ago, as they hunted in teams and spread out. Picture a hunt. One shouts, "Over there," pointing at a wildebeest, while others circle around. Without words coordinating, that would be chaos. Their larynx, the voice box, was lower than a chimp's, suggesting they could make varied sounds. By 300,000 years ago, Homo heidelbergensis, a likely ancestor to us and Neanderthals, had a hyoid bone in the throat, almost like ours, found at sites like Atapuerca, Spain. This hints at speech, maybe simple phrases, food here, danger there. For Homo sapiens, around 200,000 years ago, language got complex. Cave art and tools suggest they planned and taught, skills needing words. Imagine a mother in a cave saying to her child, "Hold the flint like this," showing how to chip a blade, or a hunter warning, "Big cat near water." Language glued groups together, letting them share plans, memories, even dreams. It's the invisible glue of humanity, turning scattered bands into tight-knit tribes. The Neolithic Revolution. Farming begins. Fast forward to about 12,000 years ago, humans had been hunters and gatherers forever, wandering in small bands of 20 to 50 people. They tracked herds of deer, bison, or mammoths across plains, picked berries and wild figs, and moved with the seasons. Spring in the valleys, summer in the hills. Their lives were mobile, free, but tough. Food wasn't guaranteed, and a bad hunt meant hunger. Then, around 10,000 BC, everything shifted in a region called the Fertile Crescent. Think modern-day Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, and parts of Israel. This wasn't a quick flip. It brewed over centuries. People noticed wild plants like einkorn wheat and emmer wheat dropping seeds that sprouted new stalks. At sites like Tel Abu Huraira in Syria around 11,000 BC, they started planting these seeds on purpose, watering them with river buckets, pulling weeds by hand. Archaeologists found grinding stones and sickle blades, curved flint tools with glossy edges from cutting stalks, showing they harvested crops by 9,500 BC. Then came animals. In Zagros Mountains, Iran, around 10,000 BC, they tamed goats. Wild ones roamed cliffs, but penned ones gave milk and meat. Sheep followed by 9,000 BC. Their wool later spun into thread. At Tayonu in Turkey, pig pens from 8,500 BC show early domestication. Imagine corralling squealing boars into mud-walled yards. Cattle came later, around 7,000 BC. in places like Çatalhöyük, where bones show they were kept close. This Neolithic revolution birthed villages. Jericho, from 9,600 BC, had 200 to 300 people in mud brick homes, surrounded by a stone wall 12 feet high and 5 feet thick, protection from floods or rival bands. A tower, 28 feet tall, still stands, one of the oldest structures ever. Çatalhöyük, by 7,400 BC, packed 5,000 to 10,000 people into a honeycomb of homes. No streets, just rooftops with ladders. Imagine kids scampering across roofs, smoke rising from clay ovens below. Farming exploded food supply. One family's wheat patch could feed dozens, so populations boomed. At Abu Huraira, numbers jumped from 100 to 500 in a few centuries. Some quit hunting to craft. Clay pots baked in kilns by 7,000 BC stored grain. Woven reed baskets held seeds. Sickles and axes got sharper. Trade started too. Obsidian, volcanic glass from Turkey, reached Jordan, swapped for shells or flint, but it wasn't paradise. Staying put meant betting on one spot. Droughts in 8,200 BC starved villages, bones showing malnutrition. Living with animals spread germs. Smallpox and measles likely jumped from cows or pigs. Crowded homes bred fights over land. Still, this shift from roaming to rooting laid the foundation for towns, cities, and everything after. Art and beliefs in prehistory. Even in those rugged days, humans weren't just about food. They craved meaning, beauty, connection. Around 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens started painting caves, leaving marks that whisper across time. Take Lascaux in France. From 17,000 BC, over 600 paintings cover its walls. Galloping horses, charging bulls, deer with antlers like crowns, all in red, black, yellow ochre. Imagine an artist, maybe a woman or elder, grinding pigments from earth, mixing them with spit or fat, brushing them on by torchlight. The bison's curve, the horse's leap, drawn with skill that rivals today's art. Were they praying for a good hunt? Teaching kids animal shapes? Telling tales of the wild? Then there's Chauvet Cave, 36,000 years old in southern France. 900 animals, including fierce lions and woolly rhinos, some sketched in charcoal so cleverly they seem to move. Handprints dot the walls, red outlines from blown pigment like ancient selfies. In Germany, the Lion Man statue, carved from mammoth ivory 40,000 years ago, stands 12 inches tall, half human, half lion. Was it a god? A shaman's vision? At Blombos Cave in South Africa, 75,000-year-old ochre chunks have crisscross patterns. Early abstract art. Burials reveal more. At Sungir, Russia, 34,000 years ago, a man and 2 kids were laid in graves with 13,000 ivory beads. Hours of work, plus spears, bracelets, and red ochre dust. In Israel's Kafze Cave, 100,000 years ago, bodies had deer antlers placed on them. In Australia, Mungo Man from 40,000 BC was sprinkled with ochre, a sacred send-off. These weren't accidents. They believed in something beyond, maybe spirits or an afterlife, carrying tools and treasures to the next world. Music might have started too. Flutes from swan bones, 40,000 years old, found in Germany's Hohle Fels Cave, could play haunting notes. Picture a firelit night, A group chants, drums on hollow logs, dances in flickering shadows. Art and rituals weren't extras. They built trust, identity, hope. They're the first threads of culture, weaving humans into something bigger than survival. Part 2. Ancient Civilizations. The First Big Societies. Mesopotamia. Cities between rivers. Around 6000 BC, in what's now southern Iraq, humans settled a fertile strip between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, Mesopotamia, or land between rivers. Floods dumped silt, turning dry plains into farmland. By 5000 BC, small villages grew crops like barley and lentils, but by 3500 BC, the Sumerians took it to another level, building the world's first city-states, Uruk, Ur, Eridu, Lagash. Uruk, the biggest, hit 50,000 people by 3000 BC. Imagine a sprawling maze of mud brick houses, narrow alleys buzzing with traders, kids, goats. Walls 20 feet thick guarded it, pierced by gates where guards checked carts of grain or reeds. At its heart stood the White Temple on a ziggurat, a stepped pyramid 40 feet high, painted white, topped with a shrine to Inanna, goddess of love and war. Priests climbed its ramps, offering beer and bread to the heavens. The Sumerians were inventors. Around 3100 BC, they created cuneiform, wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet clay with a reed stylus. Early tablets from Uruk tracked sheep or barley, 10 goats to Enki's temple, but by 2500 BC, they wrote laws, contracts, even the Epic of Gilgamesh. This tale, etched around 2100 BC, follows Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, on a quest for immortality after his buddy Enkidu dies. Think heartbreak, monsters, and a flood story older than Noah's. They rolled out the wheel by 3500 BC, first for pottery, spinning clay into pots, then for carts hauled by donkeys. Their math used base 60. Why we have 60 seconds in a minute, 360 degrees in a circle. They tracked stars, too. Tablets from 1800 BC list Venus's path. Early astronomy. Life wasn't calm. Rivers flooded unpredictably. Uruk's ruins show silt layers 10 feet deep. City-states bickered over water, clashing with spears and chariots. Around 2334 BC, Sargon of Akkad united them, forging the First Empire, 20,000 square miles from the Persian Gulf to Syria. His grandson Naram-Sin called himself King of the Four Quarters, a god among men. Later, in 1792 BC, Hammurabi of Babylon carved 282 laws on a 7-foot basalt stele. If a man puts out another's eye, his eye shall be put out. Harsh, but it aimed for order in a chaotic land. Egypt, life along the Nile. While Mesopotamia wrestled wild rivers, Egypt had the steady Nile. From 7000 BC, farmers used its silt, black gold from yearly floods, to grow wheat, barley, flax. By 5000 BC, villages like Merimda thrived with 200 people, mud huts and granaries. Around 3100 BC, King Narmer, or Menes, united Upper and Lower Egypt, wearing a double crown, red for the north, white for the south, starting a dynasty that lasted 3,000 years. Pharaohs weren't just kings, they were gods. Their power built wonders. In 2630 BC, Imhotep, architect, doctor, priest, designed the step pyramid, for Pharaoh Djoser at Saqqara, a 200-foot stack of limestone slabs, the first big stone structure. Then came Giza's Great Pyramid, 2,560 BC, 481 feet tall, 2.3 million blocks, each 2 to 70 tons. Workers, 20,000 strong, not slaves but paid farmers, hauled stones on sleds, lubricated with water, up ramps spiraling the pyramid. They ate bread, onions, and drank 10 pints of beer daily from royal breweries. It took 20 years, a monument to eternity. Hieroglyphs, over 700 picture signs, wrote their world on papyrus, a paper from Nile reeds invented by 3000 BC. Scribes in Memphis tracked taxes, 100 bushels from farmer Ptah, wrote hymns to Ra, the sun god, and mapped stars for planting seasons. Society stacked like a pyramid, Pharaoh at the top, nobles and priests below, then scribes, artisans, and farmers, 90% of the 1 to 2 million people by 2000 BC. Death obsessed them. Mummies, kings, cats, even crocodiles were wrapped in linen stuffed with natron salt and buried with spells from the Book of the Dead. Tutankhamun's tomb, found in 1922, had gold masks, chariots, a throne, riches for the afterlife. The Nile's rhythm, flood, plant, harvest, kept Egypt steady, a contrast to Mesopotamia's chaos. The Indus Valley, a mysterious civilization. Around 3,300 BC, along the Indus River in today's Pakistan and northwest India, a quiet giant rose. By 2600 BC, the Harappan civilization, named for Harappa, boasted cities like Mohenjo-Daro, each with 40,000 to 50,000 people. Streets ran in perfect grids, 8 yards wide, lined with 2-story brick homes, some with bathrooms draining into sewers under the roads. Imagine kids splashing in the Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro, a 40 by 23-foot pool, waterproofed with bitumen. Early public swimming. Trade fueled them. Lothal's dockyard shipped cotton to Mesopotamia. Digs show warehouses with seals stamped to Ur. Harappan beads, carnelian agate, turned up in Sumerian graves. They got silver, lapis lazuli, even tin back. Their script, 400 symbols on clay seals, shows fish, bulls, maybe names, but no one's cracked it. No Rosetta Stone, no bilingual clue. Art hints at life. A bronze dancing girl from 2500 BC, 4 inches tall, sassy with a hand on her hip. A priest-king bust with a headband and robe. No palaces or temples, just practical stuff like granaries holding 100 tons of wheat. By 1900 BC, they faded. Rivers shifted, Indus floods dried up, trade collapsed, or Aryans invaded. Skeletons lack war wounds, maybe drought starved them out. Their cities sank into sand, a silent riddle. Ancient China, the Yellow River dynasties. Around 5000 BC, along China's Yellow River, called Huanghe for its muddy hue, farmers grew millet in loess soil rich from floods. By 3000 BC, villages like Banpo had round huts, ovens, and cemeteries, 200 graves with pottery gifts. Legends say the Xia dynasty started in 2070 BC under Yu the Great, who tamed floods with canals, but no hard proof exists yet. The Shang dynasty, 1600 to 1046 BC, left real traces. At Anyang, their capital by 1300 BC, digs uncovered bronze cauldrons, 10 feet wide, etched with dragons, used for feasts or sacrifices. Oracle bones, 50,000 found, were turtle shells or ox scapulae, scratched with questions. Will it rain? Should we attack? Heated till they cracked, priests read the splits as yes or no, early fortune-telling. Their script, ancestor to modern Chinese, had 3,000 characters by 1200 BC. The Zhou dynasty ousted Shang in 1046 BC, ruling till 256 BC, nearly 800 years. They spread iron tools by 600 BC, plows, doubled harvests. The mandate of heaven said kings ruled by divine right, but failure, floods, losses, meant heaven picked anew. Rebellions were holy. Cities like Luoyang grew to 100,000 with palaces and markets. Confucius, 551 to 479 BC, taught respect, honor parents, obey rulers, shaping China's social glue. Laozi's Taoism, maybe 500 BC, urged living simply, like water flowing around rocks. Silk weaving from 3000 BC, spun threads traded west. By 200 BC, camel caravans carried bolts to Persia. China's roots ran deep, ready to bloom. Part 3. The Classical Age, Greece, Rome, and more. Greece, ideas, and democracy. After the Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BC, when Mycenaean palaces burned, Greece rebuilt. By 900 BC, villages on rocky hills and coastal plains turned into city-states: Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes. Around 1200 BC, the Greeks had used Linear B script, but it faded. By 800 BC, they borrowed the Phoenician alphabet, tweaking it into Greek letters like alpha and beta, our ABC's ancestor. By 800 BC, Athens and Sparta stood out. Sparta trained boys from age 7 into warriors. Tough, no shoes, little food, building an army feared across the Mediterranean. Athens went a different way. Around 508 BC, Cleisthenes launched democracy. Free male citizens, about 10% of 300,000 Athenians, voted in the assembly on laws, taxes, war. Imagine 6,000 men on a hillside shouting, "Aye" or "Nay," noisy, messy, but groundbreaking. Women, slaves, 30% of the population, and foreigners got no say. But it was a start. Ideas exploded here. Socrates, born 470 BC, roamed Athens asking, "What's justice? What's truth?" So Pesky, the city tried him for corrupting youth in 399 BC and made him drink hemlock. His student Plato, 427 to 347 BC, wrote The Republic, dreaming of a state ruled by philosopher kings, wise, selfless leaders. Aristotle, 384 to 322 BC, Plato's pupil, studied everything: stars, bugs, ethics. His poetics shaped storytelling. Tragedies need a hero's flaw, he said. His school, the Lyceum, collected books and maps, a proto-university. Culture thrived, too. Theater packed hillsides. Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, 429 BC, had audiences gasping as a king learns he's killed his dad and married his mom. Aeschylus's Oresteia tackled revenge and justice. The Olympics, from 776 BC, drew 40,000 every 4 years. Runners raced 200 yards, wrestlers grappled in dust, chariots thundered. Winners got olive wreaths, statues, free meals for life. Wars defined them. In 490 BC, at Marathon, 10,000 Athenians beat 25,000 Persians. Messenger Pheidippides ran 26 miles to announce victory, then dropped dead. Inspiration for marathons. But the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BC, pitted Athens against Sparta. Sparta won. Athens weakened, leaving room for a new star. Alexander the Great, a giant empire. Born 356 BC in Pella, Macedon, Alexander was no ordinary kid. His dad, Philip II, united Greece by 338 BC. His tutor, Aristotle, taught him logic and dreams. At 20, in 336 BC, Philip's murder made Alexander king. 2 years later, he launched a conquest spree that'd echo for centuries. By 334 BC, he crossed into Asia with 35,000 men, beating Persia at Granicus. Cavalry charges broke their lines. In 333 BC at Issus, he crushed Darius III's 100,000-strong army with 40,000, using a feint to lure them into a trap. Egypt fell in 332 BC. He founded Alexandria, a port city soon buzzing with 300,000 people. By 331 BC, Gaugamela saw him shatter Persia's core. Darius fled, later killed by his own. Alexander pushed to India, winning Hydaspes in 326 BC against King Porus's elephants with archers and phalanx tactics. He died in Babylon, 323 BC at 32 fever, maybe poison, leaving no heir. His 2 million-square-mile empire split among generals, the Diadochi. But his Hellenistic legacy lasted. Alexandria's library held 500,000 scrolls. Euclid's geometry, Eratosthenes' measuring Earth's girth, pretty close at 24,662 miles. Greek became the world's lingua franca, blending with Persian and Indian art. Think Buddha statues with Greek curls. Rome, from village to empire. Legend says Rome began in 753 BC. Twin brothers Romulus and Remus, raised by a wolf, picked a spot on the Tiber River. Romulus killed Remus, naming it Rome. By 600 BC, it was a muddy village of farmers and shepherds, huts, a market, a hill called Palatine. Around 509 BC, they ditched their Etruscan kings for a republic. 2 consuls, elected yearly, led with a senate of 300 rich guys. Rome grew tough. The Samnite Wars, 343 to 290 BC, won them central Italy. Hill fights honed their legions. The Punic Wars against Carthage, 264 to 241 BC, 218 to 201 BC, 149 to 146 BC, sealed their power. Hannibal crossed the Alps with 37 elephants in 218 BC, smashing Romans at Cannae, 40,000 dead. But Rome's grit outlasted him. By 146 BC, Carthage was ash, its fields salted. Julius Caesar, 49 BC, crossed the Rubicon, the die is cast, sparking civil war. He ruled till 44 BC, stabbed 23 times by senators fearing a king. His heir, Octavian, became Augustus in 27 BC, first emperor. The Pax Romana, 27 BC to 180 AD, brought 200 years of peace. Roads stretched 50,000 miles. Aqueducts like Lisbon's carried 50 million gallons daily. The Colosseum roared with 50,000 fans watching gladiators fight lions. Latin law, innocent till proven guilty, spread wide. New religions spread. This era birthed faiths that reshaped souls. Siddhartha Gautama, born 563 BC in India, became Buddha. His teachings of peace hit China by 100 AD via Silk Road monks, filling temples with lotus art. Jesus, born around 4 BC in Judea, preached love and forgiveness. Crucified 30 to 33 AD, his followers spread Christianity. By 100 AD, 40,000 Christians dotted Rome. The Edict of Milan, 313 AD, legalized it. By 380 AD, Theodosius made it Rome's faith. Temples flipped to churches, pagan statues swapped for crosses. Part 4. The Middle Ages, a changing world. The fall of Rome and feudal life. By 400 AD, Western Rome creaked, overtaxed, overstretched. In 410, Visigoths sacked the city. Temples burned, gold vanished. Vandals hit in 455, worse still. In 476, the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, a boy king, was ousted by Odoacer, a Germanic chief. Rome's west fell. Europe splintered into kingdoms, Franks in Gaul, Ostrogoths in Italy, Anglo-Saxons in Britain. Feudalism rose from the ashes. Kings, weak after Rome's collapse, gave land to lords for loyalty. Lords built castles, stone behemoths like Dover, 1066 AD, or Crac des Chevaliers in Syria, with walls 100 feet high. Knights, armored in chain mail by 900 AD, swore to fight. Think lance charges and sword clashes. Peasants, 90% of people, worked the fields, barley, rye, oats, living in wood and mud huts with straw roofs, maybe a pig or two inside. A village of 200 had a mill, a blacksmith, a church with a bell calling Sunday Mass. Life was local. Most never left 10 miles from home. Manors ran on a 3-field system. By 800 AD, one grew crops, one rested, one fed animals. Wheat yields doubled. But danger loomed. Viking raids from 793 AD torched villages, stealing silver and slaves. The Black Death, 1347 to 1351, killed 25 million, half Europe's people, emptying towns. Bones piled in pits. Survivors demanded more. Peasant revolts like England's in 1381 shook lords. Trade crept back. Fairs in Champagne swapped wool for silk by 1200 AD, hinting at recovery. The Byzantine Empire, Rome's other half. While the West broke, Eastern Rome, Byzantium, stood firm. Constantinople, built 330 AD by Constantine, straddled Europe and Asia. Walls 12 miles long, 60 feet high, kept invaders out. By 500 AD, 500,000 people filled its marble streets, haggling over spices, gold, silk. Justinian I, 527 to 565 AD, aimed to reclaim Rome's glory. His general Belisarius took North Africa and Italy, briefly. Justinian's Hagia Sophia, finished 537 AD, had a dome 107 feet wide. Imagine sunlight streaming through 40 windows, mosaics of Jesus gleaming gold. His Corpus Juris Civilis codified Roman law, no punishment without trial. shaping courts for centuries. Byzantium shone, silk dyed purple, worth its weight in gold, icons of saints, Greek texts saved from Rome's fall. But threats grew. Arabs hit in 674, Bulgars in 813. By 1204, Crusaders sacked it, stealing relics. The Ottoman Turks finished it in 1453. Cannon blasts toppled walls, ending 1,100 years of Rome's echo. The Islamic Golden Age. Islam rose in 622 A.D. with Muhammad's flight to Medina. By 750, the Abbasid Caliphate stretched from Spain to Pakistan, 8 million square miles. Baghdad, built 762 A.D., hit 1 million people by 900 A.D. Round, walled, with canals and markets. The House of Wisdom, 830 A.D., gathered scholars. Greek works like Aristotle's Physics got Arabic life. Al-Khwarizmi, 780 to 850 A.D., wrote Al-Jabr, birthing algebra. Solving x squared plus 10x equals 39 was his gift. His algorithms, fueled math. Ibn Sina's Canon of Medicine, 1025 A.D., listed 760 drugs, opium for pain, used in Europe till 1650. Al-Zarawi pioneered surgery, sutures from catgut. By 1000 A.D., art dazzled. Cordoba's Great Mosque, 784 A.D., had 850 red and white arches. Alhambra's tilework wove math into beauty. Trade boomed. Camels hauled gold from Mali, silk from China. By 1200, Mongols and crusades dimmed the glow, but its legacy lit the Renaissance. Crusades and trade. In 1095, Pope Urban II called Christians to reclaim Jerusalem. Crusades began. 9 wars, from 1096 to 1291, mixed blood and exchange. The First Crusade took Jerusalem in 1099. 30,000 died in the siege. Saladin retook it in 1187, a Muslim hero. Europeans found sugar, spices, lemons, new tastes, reshaped diets. The Silk Road, active since 200 BC, peaked. Marco Polo's 1271 trip to China brought tales of Kublai Khan's court, paper money, coal. Gunpowder hit Europe by 1300. Cannons changed war. Trade fairs in Flanders sold wool for silk, sparking a web from Venice to Beijing. Part 5. Renaissance and Enlightenment. New ideas. The Renaissance, art and learning. By 1300, Europe stirred from medieval sleep. The Renaissance dawned in Italy. Florence, rich from wool and banking, led the charge. By 1350, scholars like Petrarch dug up Roman texts, Cicero, Virgil, reviving humanism, a love for human potential. Art soared. Leonardo da Vinci, 1452 to 1519, painted Mona Lisa, her smile still puzzles us, and sketched helicopters, tanks, notebooks, over 13,000 pages. Michelangelo's David, 1504, a 17-foot marble giant, stood proud in Florence, every muscle carved perfect. His Sistine Chapel ceiling, 1508 to 1512, sprawled 5,000 square feet. God touching Adam's finger took 4 years on a scaffold. Raphael's School of Athens, 1511, put Plato and Aristotle in a grand hall. Reason's triumph. The printing press, 1440, by Johannes Gutenberg, changed the game. Movable type spat out 3,600 pages daily. By 1500, 20 million books circulated. Bibles, maps, science texts. Literacy jumped. Peasants read Luther's tracts by 1520. Venice's printers churned 2 million books in 50 years. Knowledge flooding Europe. Exploration, discovering the world. Curiosity turned outward. In 1415, Portugal's Prince Henry sent ships down Africa's coast. By 1488, Bartolomeo Diaz rounded the Cape of Good Hope. Columbus, 1492, sailed west for Asia, hit the Caribbean, San Salvador, thinking at India. His 4 trips brought Spain gold, but smallpox killed millions of natives, 90% of America's 50 million by 1600. Vasco da Gama hit India in 1498. Calicuts pepper-spiced Europe. Magellan's crew circled the globe 1519 to 1522. He died, but 18 of 270 made it back, proving Earth roundish, 24,901 miles around. The Columbian Exchange swapped potatoes, maize, tomatoes to Europe, feeding millions, while horses and cows hit the Americas, reshaping tribes like the Plains Indians. The Scientific Revolution. Science broke free. In 1543, Copernicus said, "Earth orbits the sun." Church hated it. Galileo, 1609, built a telescope, saw Jupiter's moons, Venus's phases, proof Copernicus was right. Arrested in 1633, he recanted under house arrest, muttering, "And yet it moves." Francis Bacon, 1620, pushed experiments. Test, don't guess. Isaac Newton, 1687, wrote Principia. Gravity pulls apples and planets alike. His laws, motion, force, ran machines and rockets. Microscopes by Leeuwenhoek, 1670s, showed bacteria, life unseen. This was reason's dawn. The Enlightenment, freedom and reason. By 1700, thinkers lit up Europe, the Enlightenment. John Locke, 1690, said people have rights. Life, liberty, property. Government serve them or revolt. Voltaire, 1694 to 1778, mocked kings and priests, jailed twice for free speech. Rousseau, 1762, wrote Social Contract, power from the people, not God. Ideas ignited. The American Revolution, 1776, birthed a nation on all men are created equal. Thomas Jefferson echoed Locke. France's Revolution, 1789, toppled Louis XVI, guillotine's blade fell, liberty rose, coffeehouses buzzed, London's 3,000 by 1710 hosted debates. Books like Diderot's Encyclopédie, 1751, spread reason. 28 volumes, banned, but read. Part 6. The Industrial Revolution. Machines take over. Steam and factories. By the late 1700s, Europe was ready for a massive leap, and it started in Britain. Welcome to the Industrial Revolution. Around 1712, Thomas Newcomen built an early steam engine to pump water from coal mines. Clunky, but it worked. Then in 1769, James Watt tweaked it, making it powerful and efficient. Picture this: a hulking machine, hissing steam, its pistons chugging like a heartbeat, driving wheels and belts in workshops across Britain. By 1800, over 500-watt engines puffed away, turning coal into motion. Coal was king, mined from pits in Wales and northern England. It fueled everything. In 1735, Abraham Darby smelted iron with coke, cooked coal, sparking mass production, iron for bridges, machines, rails. The textile boom hit hard. John Kay's flying shuttle, 1733, doubled weaving speed. James Hargreaves's spinning jenny, 1764, spun 8 threads at once, then 120 by 1780. Richard Arkwright's water frame, 1769, ran on rivers, then steam, birthing factories. By 1800, Manchester's cotton mills churned out 50,000 tons of cloth yearly. Threads dyed red, blue, shipped worldwide. Factories rose fast. brick buildings with tall chimneys belching black smoke. In 1781, Arkwright's Cromford Mill in Derbyshire employed 200, mostly women and kids, working 12-hour shifts, machines clattering nonstop. Imagine the noise. Whirring spindles, clanking looms, shouts over the din. Cotton came from American plantations. Slave labor fed this boom, turning Britain into the workshop of the world. By 1820, exporting 200 million pounds in goods, billions today. Cities and hard lives. This wasn't just about machines. It reshaped lives. Villages emptied as people chased factory jobs. London hit 1 million by 1801, Manchester 75,000 by 1820, up from 10,000 in 1850-1700. Streets filled with cramped tenements, 5 families in one room, no windows, sewage and gutters. Coal smoke choked the air. Life expectancy in cities dropped to 30 by 1840, half that of rural areas. Kids worked. 8-year-olds crawled under looms to fix threads, earning pennies for 14-hour days. In 1819, a cotton mill collapse in Manchester killed 20 child workers. News barely blinked. Factory acts like 1833's capped kids at 9 hours, but enforcement lagged. Charles Dickens saw it. His Oliver Twist, 1838, showed orphans sold to factories. Hard Times, 1854, painted grim mill towns. Yet change brewed. Canals like Bridgewater, 1761, cut coal shipping costs by half, linking mines to mills. Railways boomed. George Stephenson's rocket, 1829, hit 30 miles per hour. By 1850, Britain had 6,000 miles of track. A trip from London to Manchester shrank from 4 days by coach to 4 hours by train. Goods, people, ideas moved fast. Middle-class families grew, factory owners, clerks, buying pianos, tea, newspapers. Still, slums festered. Cholera swept 1832, killing 32,000, a wake-up call for sanitation. Electricity and cars. A second wave hit by 1870 to 1870, electricity and oil. Michael Faraday's 1831 dynamo spun magnets for power. By 1882, Edison's Pearl Street station lit New York with 110 volts. 85 customers at first, thousands soon. London's Holborn Viaduct glowed electric by 1881. Street lamps banished dark alleys. Factories ran 24/7. Electric motors hummed quieter than steam. Telegraphs clicked. Samuel Morse's 1844 line from Washington to Baltimore tapped, "What hath God wrought?" By 1866, a cable under the Atlantic linked continents. News flew in hours, not weeks. Alexander Graham Bell's telephone, 1876, rang across rooms. By 1900, 1.4 million phones buzzed in the U.S., operators patching calls. Then came cars. Carl Benz's 1885 motor wagon, 3 wheels, 0.75 horsepower, puttered at 10 miles per hour. Henry Ford's Model T, 1908, hit 20 miles per hour, cheap at $850. His assembly line, 1913, built one in 93 minutes, dropping prices to $260 by 1925. By 1927, 15 million rolled out. Roads paved, suburbs sprouted. Oil rigs in Texas, 1901, gushed black gold. Gas stations dotted highways by 1920. Life accelerated. Families drove to shops, jobs, vacations. Empires and colonies. Machines needed fuel, coal, cotton, rubber, so Europe grabbed more. Britain took India by 1858 to 300 million people under the Raj, cotton feeding Manchester's mills. The 1857 Sepoy Mutiny, Indian troops rebelling over rifle grease, killed thousands. Britain crushed it, tightening grip. France seized Vietnam, 1887, for rice and rubber. Hanoi's opera house mimicked Paris. Africa got carved. 1884 Berlin Conference split it among powers. Britain nabbed Nigeria, gold mines. Belgium's Congo, 1908, bled rubber. 10 million died under Leopold II's brutal quotas, hands cut for failing. Colonies fought back. Ethiopia beat Italy at Adwa, 1896, staying free. Trade soared. Tea from Ceylon, sugar from Jamaica. But wealth flowed one way, to Europe's coffers. Part 7. The Modern Era, Wars and Tech. World War I. By 1900, Europe's empires bristled. Guns, ships, pride. In 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination in Sarajevo lit the fuse. World War I erupted. Alliances dragged in 32 nations: Germany, Austria, Hungary versus Britain, France, Russia. Trenches scarred France. Verdun, 1916, saw 700,000 dead in mud and wire. New tech killed fast. Machine guns spat 600 rounds a minute. Gas blinded lungs. Tanks rumbled over no man's land. Zeppelins bombed London. 50 raids. 557 dead. By 1918, 16 million were gone. 9 million soldiers, 7 million civilians. The Treaty of Versailles, 1919, blamed Germany, sowing resentment. Women ran factories. Munitionettes made shells. Pushing suffrage, Britain gave votes in 1918. Russia's 1917 revolution birthed the Soviet Union. Lenin's red flag rose. World War II. The 1929 stock crash tanked economies. Germany's Nazis rose. Hitler, 1933, rebuilt. Tanks, planes, hate. World War II hit 1939. Germany swallowed Poland, sparking 6 years of hell. By 1945, 70 million died. Soldiers, civilians, holocausts, 6 million Jews. Blitzkrieg rolled. France fell, 1940. Bombs blitzed London. Japan's Pearl Harbor, 1941, pulled the U.S. in. D-Day, 1944, saw 156,000 allies storm Normandy. Stalin's Red Army crushed east. 20 million Soviets died. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, August 1945, atomic bombs, 200,000 dead, ended it. Radar, jets, penicillin emerged. War sped tech. The UN formed 1945 to stop round 3. The Cold War. Post-1945, the U.S. and Soviet Union glared. Capitalism versus communism. No shots fired directly. Proxy wars flared. Korea, 1950 to 53, split north-south. Vietnam, 1965 to 73, saw 58,000 U.S. dead, 2 million Vietnamese. The space race lit up. Sputnik, 1957, beeped from orbit. Apollo 11, 1969, put Armstrong on the moon. One small step. Nukes loomed. Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962, had Kennedy and Khrushchev 13 days from doomsday. Berlin Wall, 1961 to 1989, split east-west. 200 died crossing. The Soviet Union crumbled 1991. Economy tanked. Republic split, ending the chill. The digital age. Computers changed all. ENIAC, 1945, filled a room. 18,000 tubes, 6 women programmed it. Intel's 1971 microprocessor shrank power. Moore's Law doubled chips every 2 years. By 1981, IBM's PC hit homes. Apple's Mac, 1984, clicked icons. The Internet, from ARPANET 1969, went public. 1991's World Wide Web. Tim Berners-Lee's gift, linked pages. Email buzzed. Google sorted chaos by 1998 to 2 trillion searches yearly now. Smartphones, iPhone 2007, put it in pockets. 5 billion users by 2023. Social media, Facebook 2004, tied 3 billion. AI, like ChatGPT, drafts books. Future's here. Part 8. The Future. What's next? Climate trouble. Now, Earth heats. CO2 from coal, cars, hit 420 parts per million by 2023, up from 280 pre-industry. Temp rose 1,1 degré Celsius depuis 1880. Tempête rage, glace fond, mer grimpe 8 pouces. In 2021, Hurricane Ida drowned New York subways. Greenland lost 500 billion tons of ice. Solar panels, 1 million U.S. homes by 2020. Wind turbines, electric cars, Tesla's 1.5 million sold. Fight back. Paris Agreement, 2015, aims for 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2050's net zero dream. But coal's 37% of power lingers. India, China build plants. It's a race, floods or fixes. Tech dreams. Tech race is wild. SpaceX's Starship, 2023 tests, eyes Mars, 100 settlers by 2050. AI cures. DeepMind's 2021 protein maps speed drugs. CRISPR edits genes, slashing sickle cell, but risks loom. AI jobs lost, 30% by 2030. Drones weaponized. Who rules it? Governments. Tech giants. A connected world. Globalization ties us. Trade hits $28 trillion, 2022. Planes zip 4 billion yearly. Internet's 5 billion users chat. Zoom ran 2020's lockdown. But cracks show. COVID killed 6 million. Wars like Ukraine 2022 spike oil. Can we unite for climate, AI, peace, or fracture? Conclusion. From chipped stones to smartphones, we've walked a wild road, hunting, farming, building, dreaming. Each step, fire, wheel, steam, code, pushed us forward through wars and wonders. The future's ours to shape. Will we soar to stars or stumble? Thanks for joining this epic tale.